Season 8 of Rick and Morty continues to take audiences on insane adventures across countless dimensions, where intellect, madness, and emotions intertwine perfectly. Despite having gone through many seasons, the series still retains its charm thanks to bold ideas, unexpected twists, and a deep exploration of the relationship between Rick and Morty. Among the countless adventures, there are episodes that truly stand out, making viewers laugh out loud while also compelling them to pause and reflect. So now, grab a cup of coffee and join us as we revisit the most memorable episodes of Rick and Morty Season 8. Season 8 kicks off with an episode titled Summer of All Fears. In a world where everything revolves around phone chargers, the episode begins with Summer as a successful young entrepreneur, while Morty is a reclusive veteran living on the fringes of society. The two team up for a daring plan to wipe out phone chargers in a world obsessed with energy to the extreme.
Dear God, Summer Smith has made phone chargers obsolete!
However, what they don't realize is that the entire world is just a matrix created by Rick to punish his two grandkids for forgetting to return his phone charger. The ironic twist, while Rick only intended to teach the kids a lesson, he accidentally fell asleep, leaving Summer and Morty stuck living in the simulated world for a whopping 17 years.
Rick put us in a simulated reality to teach us a lesson about taking his phone charger and not giving him back, and then he fell asleep and forgot about us for the Matrix equivalent of 17 years!
After escaping the simulation, Summer and Morty were no longer carefree kids, but instead became individuals who had endured war, loss, and deep pain. Rick intended to erase the memories of those 17 years, but faced with Summer's resolute gaze and Morty's hollow stare, he reluctantly agreed to let them keep their memories. However, he still warned Beth to keep an eye on them, as a cautionary note about the unpredictable consequences of the chaos that was bound to follow.
Give me a holler when this goes south.
Summer had grown both in appearance and mindset, starting to find a connection with Beth. The two of them raised their glasses together, sharing thoughts and feelings they had never dared to express before. Beth began to admire this new version of her daughter, strong, confident, and seemingly more understanding than ever. However, when Summer displayed an over-the-top confidence, it unintentionally made Beth feel overwhelmed, gradually creating a rift between the two of them. While Morty wasn't as lucky, 17 years in the simulated world left him with deep psychological scars. When a shard of broken glass fell, the sound triggered something in him. It brought back the haunting memories of his time in the Matrix. In those flashbacks, Morty had been imprisoned for theft. In jail, he learned how to survive, toughened himself up, and got a tattoo of a phone charger on his arm, a symbol of a past he could never escape. After getting out of prison, no one would hire a guy who had been convicted of stealing a charger, so Morty ended up joining the fire brigade, where he met his best friend CJ. Together, they fought against blazing electrical outlets until one day Morty and his team witnessed a horrifying news segment. A terrorist was publicly chopping up a phone charger. Rage erupted, morphing into hatred, dragging Morty and his new comrades into the whirlwind of war. Darkness engulfed the battlefield of the Matrix, where his teammates fell in devastating ways, while Morty, against all logic, couldn't die. He became a war veteran carrying PTSD that Rick couldn't cure with any of his tech.
Just take whatever you want. Nothing out here fucking matters.
Returning to Summer, at this point, she and Beth are in a relationship that's anything but pleasant. Beth decides to turn her back on compromise and seeks to erase her daughter's memories. Morty seizes the opportunity to deliver a cold-blooded retaliation. He traps Rick in a matrix, forcing him to experience the very thing he created. However, Rick, the genius, refuses to be subdued and quickly constructs another matrix within the original one to escape. Meanwhile, Morty steals Rick's death race car and speeds toward the power plant valley, the hub of the world's energy supply.
That's just the nature of the world!
A flashback strikes the lightning. Morty embraces CJ, who is dying, a comrade who calls him the brother I never had. Fueled by rage, Morty breaks into the bunker and takes down the terrorist Osama bin Laden. And now he's successfully infiltrated the power plant. If he manages to bring down the grid, all electricity and charging across North America will be completely disabled. At this moment, in Zentophi, after a conversation, Summer and Beth's relationship has gradually improved. Determined not to let her younger brother make mistakes, Summer timely appears, and here a very unexpected twist is revealed. Summer is the one who instigated the war Morty once participated in, just to exploit lithium.
Thank you, soldier. Full hearts, full charge.
We're lithium rich!
The two choose to reconcile everything peacefully. However, Morty's still shocked as he has just gone through a painful journey solely for his sister's utilitarian purposes.
I want to go home.
Yeah, let's go home.
He accepts to step back, but an unintentional comment from a scientist about the possibility that they are still in another matrix makes both of them extremely angry. Summer and Morty rush in to beat him up until Rick shows up. Though exhausted, he still manages to prevent everything from turning into a nuclear disaster. Returning home, Morty and Summer agree to let Rick erase those 17 years of memories. Both of them are now back to being innocent kids, but the invisible scars of the Matrix remain, buried deep beneath the erased memories. The story of the phone charger comes to an end, leaving behind a void, an unnamed confusion in their souls, and so the world keeps spinning as if those 17 years had never happened.
Yo, Trisha, what are we huffing tonight, bitch?
In the third episode of Season 8, titled The Rick, the Morty, and the Ugly, we witness the cold and desolate aftermath of the Citadel's collapse, littered with remnants everywhere. It's a chaotic landscape of discarded universes where even garbage collection turns into an exhausting adventure. Rick C-137, with his familiar grumpy expression, pilots his spaceship to scavenge debris, while Morty Prime sighs in frustration, endlessly complaining about the never-ending nature of the task. Suddenly, a sharp piece of debris pierces the windshield, forcing them to make an emergency landing on a nearby asteroid. They end up landing in a cornfield and are immediately confronted by a homesteader Rick waiting for them. He's gripping a hunting rifle, aiming it straight at Rick and Morty as a stern warning. C-137 and Morty quickly leave, and homesteader Rick returns to his daily routine, harvesting corn, feeding livestock, and living a reclusive life amidst the ruins of a fallen Rick empire. However, that peace didn't last long. One day when homesteader Rick stopped by Mortytown to buy supplies from Arcade Morty, the sky suddenly lit up with plasma red hues. Armed to the teeth Ricks, under the command of trafficker Rick, swooped in like a pack of vultures. They kidnapped countless Mortys, tying them up like slaves, ready to ship them off to the new Citadel, a fortress being rebuilt on a nearby planet. In an attempt to retreat peacefully, homesteader Rick was mercilessly shot down by the attackers.
Burn it all down, boys!
Luckily, drones from his truck managed to save him and patch up his gruesome wounds. Returning to his farm, homesteader Rick found devastation everywhere. Cornfields ravaged, livestock slaughtered. His fury erupted not just as a thirst for revenge, but as the roar of a man stripped for his simple, peaceful life. He reopened the weapons cache buried deep under the floor, gearing up for a life or death battle. Joining homesteader Rick in his mission are Arcade Morty and Doc Morty, aiming to rescue the Mortys from Rick's oppressive rule. The trio then infiltrates the new Citadel, a place teeming with cloned Ricks and assembly lines churning out Mortys at full throttle. A fierce, chaotic battle erupts. Amid the hail of relentless gunfire, Doc Morty falls, his death swift and agonizing, fueling homesteader Rick's burning hatred even further.
Bye, pal. Off to the big med school in the sky.
At the height of the chaos, Boss Hog Rick, a clone originally created as the mascot for the old Gumbo shop, now the mastermind behind the construction of the new Citadel, makes a grand, arrogant entrance. He reveals homesteader Rick's shocking past, that he was once the head of the cloning department at the old Citadel. Without missing a beat, Boss Hog Rick offers him a deal: return to his old position and serve under his command.
I'd love to offer you your old job back. I'll take it. Hit the switch.
Homesteader Rick, in a moment that seemed like betrayal, accepted the deal. He created a complete Morty clone that amazed all the Ricks. However, this clone was secretly tampered with, causing it to quickly transform into a gigantic, unimaginable Morty monster that began a rampage of destruction. While the Morty monster wreaked havoc, homesteader Rick and Arcade Morty freed all the kidnapped Mortys. He led them onto trafficker Rick's spaceship and launched it, reminding them to seek out new memories and write their own lives. Homesteader Rick chose to stay behind, facing the consequences of the destruction he had caused. It could be considered the most beautiful moment of the episode, as Rick bravely sacrificed himself to fix the mistakes he had made. As the Morty monster fell, homesteader Rick kept fighting, taking down countless other Ricks before confronting the final enemy, Boss Hog Rick. Homesteader Rick knew that everything would end here and now. He detonated all the bombs he had planted, taking himself and his enemy, completely leveling the new Citadel and causing the freshly reborn Rick Empire to collapse once again. When the dust settled, Arcade Morty stood amidst the sky of ashes, his empty gaze fixed on the place that was once the Citadel. He led the remaining Mortys to other planets, forcing them to learn how to live independently and no longer be anyone's shadow. Afterward, he returned to Homesteader's old farm and erected 2 graves, one for Homesteader Rick, one for Doc Morty. Just then, Rick C-137 and Morty Prime showed up only to retrieve Morty's fidget spinner. They saw the burned down farm and the 2 gravestones standing there. Rick immediately deduced that Arcade Morty had killed his Rick and set up the graves as a warning.
Yeah, look, there's a grave. He buried him out front as a warning.
Damn, ice cold.
Rick C-137 dragged Morty Prime away, carrying with him a massive misunderstanding, leaving Arcade Morty alone with his pain and the weight of his sacrifice. Could this misunderstanding be the beginning of a new feud in the future between C-137 and Arcade Morty? Or will Homesteader Rick's sacrifice forever be overshadowed by a trivial toy? Share your thoughts and analysis in the comments below this video. The next episode, which is considered quite impressive this season, is episode 8 titled Nomortland. This is one of the rare episodes where Jerry Smith appears throughout the entire adventure. The scene begins with Jerry stepping out of the bathroom only to find a clone of himself casually enjoying his favorite daily meal. Both freeze, staring at each other as if the world had just split into two, before launching into a wild chase. The real Jerry eventually manages to catch up with the clone and interrogates him.
Are you a clone of me?
However, the other Jerry, sporting a beard and a gentle look, who goes by the name Mooch Jerry, simply defends himself, saying,
Come on, you can buy me lunch. I'm not buying you lunch.
The showdown between the two Jerrys ended with a lunch date at the mall near their house. Since that moment, the bond between the two has become increasingly close. After returning home, Jerry tried to distract Rick so Mooch could sneak into his bedroom easily. The conversation between the father and son ended with Rick's frown, and Jerry quickly returned to his room, where Mooch was waiting for him to kick off their adventure. And thus, the journey of interdimensional travel through Jerry's wardrobe officially began. They crossed the blah blah world, where everyone only says blah instead of any language.
Blah, 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 blah.
Somewhere of that dimension ran up and shouted blah blah blah, while Jerry just smiled and responded with a single blah.
Blah?
As if he had finally found the perfect way to fit in this world. The two then visited the yarn world, where everything, including human bodies, was woven from yarn. Then came the goat world, where all creatures took the form of goats. Finally, they arrived at the hippie world, where everything existed in a haze of smoke and music. The two Jerrys laughed and played like kids, and for the first time in his life, Jerry felt like he was truly living. However, an unexpected mishap occurred when they got too caught up in their fun and missed the chance to return to the Parmesan dimension.
We missed the connection? What does that mean? What does that mean?
Jerry and Mooch were forced to head to Grand Central, a central dimension with countless pathways leading to other worlds. There, Jerry accidentally angered Boss Jerry, which led them to being banished and transported to Mooch's original dimension, the 5 o'clock Shadow Dimension. After reuniting with his family, Mooch tried to convince the Rick from the dimension to use the portal gun to help both of them return to Grand Central, as it was the only way to get Jerry back home. When Rick opened the portal, Mooch said goodbye to his family and went back to Grand Central with Jerry. They came up with the idea of wrapping themselves in red tape to blend in with the other Jerrys there, but they were quickly discovered and chased down. The two managed to break through the mob without too much trouble, but the real challenge began when Boss Jerry joined the fray. A fierce chase ensued, with a gang of Jerrys pursuing the two intruders across multiple dimensions. The chaos finally came to an end when Mooch severed the connection between Grand Central and the world, causing Boss Jerry to vanish completely.
Happy trails, bitch.
Mooch and Jerry then returned together to the familiar Parmesan dimension. They bid each other a heartfelt farewell, like two souls who had found harmony for a brief moment in time. Just then, the Smith family burst into the room, furious and deeply worried because Jerry had disappeared without leaving a word. Jerry simply laughed and said it was some private time for himself. His response made the entire family shudder and feel utterly disgusted.
Oh, you know, just taking some me time.
The final episode of Season 8, titled Hot Rick, is considered quite an impressive one, focusing on family bonds. The episode kicks off with Rick having a steamy night with his girlfriend, Bug Ann. However, Bug Ann complained that Rick's skills were no longer as good, forcing her to change into a new outfit to look more alluring. Bug Ann wonders whether Rick has changed so much because he still remembers Diane? Rick responds, no, claiming that he has erased all memories of Diane. But the truth seems to not be quite as Rick says. Returning home, Rick shares with Beth and Space Beth that he just went to meet his girlfriend. However, the two kids dismiss it, saying it was just Rick's way of trying to forget the image of Diane that still lingers deeply in his mind. Rick denies this, and Jerry, sitting nearby, speaks up to defend him. Jerry argues that Rick is a good father and grandfather, recalling vividly the time of his wedding to Beth and then Morty's birth, which leaves Rick startled. Not wanting to keep any memories of Diane, even in someone else's mind, Rick immediately takes Jerry away to erase all of memories about Diane. Rick placed a device that replayed memories on Jerry's head, causing all of Jerry's memories from the time when Rick was still a good man to resurface. Among them, the family got to meet Memory Rick, a version of Rick from the past who is incredibly kind-hearted, just as Jerry had described. However, in the present, Rick no longer cared about that version of himself. Rick didn't want Memory Rick to exist because he wanted to prevent him from manipulating the memories of the entire family. Because of that, Rick chose to erase Memory Rick from all dimensions by trapping him in a desolate place and then wiping Jerry's memories clean, making him forget all the beautiful moments he had with Rick.
Fuck you, old man! What, you threatened by my youthful vigor? You ain't got the juice!
After that action, Rick sat pensively in front of the house, his face unable to hide the deep contemplation. Waiting until no one was paying attention to him, Rick once again delved into his own memories to find Diane. At this point, Rick encounters Diane practicing at a shooting range, which suddenly stirs up a wave of emotion in him. Although he truly misses his wife, Rick is forced to erase Diane from his mind in order to rekindle the spark of love within himself.
Bugman? Hey, weird pic.
The next morning, Beth went down to the lab to look for Rick, but didn't find him. She turned on the computer screen and saw where her father was keeping Memory Rick locked up. While she was curious about those devices, she was suddenly invaded by Memory Rick, who took control of her mind. At this moment, Bug-Ann was at the Smith's doorstep to pick Rick up for an outing. He admitted to the whole family that he had erased all memories of Diane from his mind. This made Beth extremely angry, unable to accept that her father had so quickly let go of everything about her mother. All of this was inadvertently overheard by Memory Rick, who managed to escape through Beth. Memory Rick began traveling through different timelines, manipulating younger versions of Beth to free Diane from the prison of memories and bring her back to Rick's current memory. Rick is currently meeting Bug-Ann's family on her planet and is given a test to assess his feelings for Bug-Ann. Rick quickly wins, but accidentally reveals that he still remembers Diane, which leaves Bug-Ann deeply disappointed.
To a thing, Rick! You didn't have to come, and you certainly didn't have to take your dead wife out of your head!
Meanwhile, in the present reality, Beth is being manipulated as he tries to use Rick's devices once again in an attempt to bring her mother back. However, this action is discovered and stopped by Space Beth. Space Beth fully supports Rick's romantic feelings, but unintentionally lets her guard down and gets taken down by Beth. Beth in the present reality has been successfully manipulated by Memory Rick. At this point, in the dimension of memories, Rick has successfully rescued Diane and wants to bring his wife completely back to reality. But while being threatened with a knife by one Beth, Diane reveals that Beth is also just a memory. This inadvertently triggers the easily influenced memories of the other Beths, causing the plan to fall apart.
Scramble your own brain!
I wonder where I got.
Rick, returning home from Bug-Ann's planet, fixes Space Beth and decides to settle this once and for all so he will never be haunted by Diane again. Both of the present realities being chased by the Beths from their memories to stop her from protecting Memory Rick. In a moment where death was almost imminent, she was saved just in time by Space Beth. Rick also arrived in time to confront his daughter and bring her back home. In the familiar space of the laboratory room, Beth agreed to let Rick erase all her memories of Diane without holding any resentment against him anymore. However, a gloomy atmosphere still hung over the house as the family members remained attached to Memory Rick. A version of Rick who was incredibly kind, which made the present-day Rick deeply uncomfortable. He launched his spaceship into outer space, warning Memory Rick and Diane to create a new reality for themselves and never bother his family again.
You get within 100 light years of my family, or try to build yourself a brain creature mech suit or whatever, your whole container thing explodes.